Come on, Nathan. Let's say howdy.
Why have you brought a fucking horse into my house?
Now dig on this.
Watch out!
Welcome to Classic Movie Banter. You know that podcast where me, that guy Brenton, and another guy over there, Nathan.
Hello.
We talk about films that are 20 years or older. 20 years!
20 of them.
And we tell you whether those films are still worth watching today, or if they're not. Like, if you put your DVD case with the disc in it on a train and let it roll off into the sunset.
Oh no, Brenton. That sounds a lot like the movie Shanghai Noon.
Funny that, because that's the film we're reviewing.
Oh, there
Shanghai
we go.
Noon. That was released in the year 2000, 20 years ago. Funny that. And it was directed by Tom D. or Day? I don't know.
Who also directed that amazing dog movie, Marmaduke.
That was released in 2010. Hasn't done a lot. Full
No,
films
hasn't
on the
really made much
filmography,
since this
you know,
movie,
so,
has he?
Yeah, he's sitting at a ripe old age at 54, so hopefully, but who knows? Marmaduke was a bit of a flop, I understand. I didn't see that thing, but
No, why would you, frankly?
I heard it was kind of shit, if I'm being honest, but that's okay, because we're not here to talk about Marmaduke now.
No, we're not. I wish, frankly. No, we're here to talk about Shanghai Noon, Brenton. Sit down, all right? Come into my office. We're here and, where the fuck are we? We're in LA. Let's say we're in LA, and I want to pitch you this movie, Shanghai Noon. Can you pitch me the movie? All right, Brenton. Are you familiar with the premise of Mario?
As in the video game
Yes, the
Mario?
video game Mario.
I see where this is going, and I like it. But yes, I am familiar with the video game Mario.
Wonderful. I'm imagining you've brought in some PAs who have never played like Mario before, so I'm going to turn to them, Brenton, and explain that in the video game Mario, most of the narratives are bent around a princess being kidnapped.
Princess Peach?
Yes, Princess Peach. You know what? Pee's not that far from Peach, isn't it?
Oh, shit.
Here we go.
No.
He's done it. He's drawn parallels. Because,
Hey.
Brenton, we're in the late 1800s, and Jackie Chan, he's in Imperial China, and he's protecting, the princess. And she gets kidnapped, Brenton. Not by Bowser, although I kind of wish it was Bowser, but by Chinese Bowser, essentially.
Oh, no.
And he takes a kidnapped princess to to the most obvious location you would in Imperial China, which is Wild West America.
Ah!
To be a slave or something? I don't know. But anyway, so he takes her over there, and then Jackie Chan's like, oh no, now I got to go to the Wild Wild West. So he goes and encounters Owen Wilson. And Brenton,
Wow.
they get into a scuffle, but then maybe they find love. Not with each other, but they do find friendship with each other. And they go off on this buddy cop comedy to try and rescue the princess.
What, are they cops too?
No, he kind of is. Jackie Chan's like an Imperial Guard. I guess that counts like a cop. But Owen Wilson's, the kind of goofy cowboy, and Jackie Chan's, he's all too serious and he's all too kung fu. So together they got to find some middle ground and just get up to some shit.
Nathan, can I ask, remind me as to why we're reviewing this film?
That's a good question. I mean, we wanted to talk about Jackie Chan for ages. We never really had like a moment to do it. So when I sat you down earlier and I'm like, okay, what's Jackie Chan films we could do? You said Shanghai Noon and I said Drunken Master because I haven't seen either of them. And so rather than split the difference, we decided to do Shanghai this week and Drunken next week. So it's like a double bill, but where each movie gets a whole space to itself.
Nathan, you're a champion, filling in our lovely, lovely listeners as to what goes on behind the scenes here on Classic Movie Banter.
But yeah, so that's why we're talking about Shanghai Noon. Now, Brenton, you suggested Shanghai Noon because you told me you've seen this before, and when I said, oh, let's put a Jackie Chan film, you're like, oh fuck yeah, Shanghai Noon, let's watch it, and I'm like, yes, for sure, man. Jackie Chan, Owen Wilson, what a combo, what a A+ combo. The pitch alone is just those two acting together.
Yeah,
right?
totally. And you know what's funny is that was a really good impression of me. But second of all, as I remember saying that to you, and it became off a whim of like, yeah, I'd seen the film. And the truth was that I remembered nothing about it, but just as a kid, I really enjoyed watching it when I saw the film. And then it got me wondering, because I watched this and I couldn't remember any of it. And I was like, I don't remember any of this. And then I thought, wait a second. Wait a hot second, this film got a sequel called Shanghai Nights. And did I actually see that film? And genuinely, I have no idea which of the two films I saw. I just know I saw one of them and thought it was a fun time as a little kid.
But you're not sure which one.
But now, unfortunately, I think I have to bring up that we are, regardless of what happens in this episode, we have to review in 2022 Shanghai Nights, because I need to understand which of the
Just
two
to
I
your
saw.
own personal. You know that you could just watch this off air for your own leisure. You have to you have to drag me into this ditch that you've dug yourself, Brenton.
Nathan, I don't watch films outside of this podcast.
I mean, why would you, frankly? It took me years to nag you to see Spider-Man Far From Home. Geez, so it makes more sense. Like,
You know me. Always the slippery eel. Tell me what you thought of this film, because I want to know. Can you tell me?
it's funny because I actually was a little bit hyped for this because when I heard of Jackie Chan and
a
Owen
little
Wilson,
bit.
I'm like, I had a little bit of hype because after having such a good time with our last Western, Wild Wild West, I'm like, oath. If it's anything like Will Smith and Kevin Kline, I'm all for this. And when you said Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson, I'm like, of course, you can do no wrong with this. But to be honest with you, Brenton, while watching it, I kind of felt it. I didn't feel that much with this. I found it kind of by the books.
You know what I thought, Nathan? Just off the back of that? I thought if I was to sum this up, I would call it, and no offense to poor people, because I'm one of you, I would call this a poor man's Wild Wild West.
Thank you. That's a very apt comparison. Now, may I remind you, Brenton, that at the time you gave Wild Wild West a no. You changed it. You changed it when we looked back.
Did I?
Which is madness that
sure?
you would say no to that movie.
I do some wacky shit on this podcast, guys.
Oh.
Like, look, this is enjoyable enough, to be fair. Like, this
Yeah.
is like it plods along. It's enjoyable enough.
It's like a Macca's burger. Like
Yeah.
it fills you up, but it's not a good meal, you know? Like,
I like the combination of Owen and Jackie enough.
but I think they exclusively hold up this movie. I think
Exactly.
they're doing literally all of the work.
Literally.
I think most of the other departments, probably most of them have fallen a little bit flat on this. Like
Oh, absolutely.
screenplay, direction, even costume design's a little bit bland. Like,
I agree. There's the moment that we're meant to, like, speaking of costume design, there's a moment where the costume design is specifically brought into frame.
yeah.
And as the audience, you're like, oh, we're meant to find this really cool. And it's just not.
No, it really isn't. And like, it's not bad enough that I want to launch into a diatribe on it. I'm just kind of, I'm like the principal. I bring the kid in because he's done a mistake, and I'm just disappointed, Brenton. You know?
Ooh, damn.
Yeah, I'm not even angry. I'm disappointed. You know what? This one's got a bunch of issues. I think the most glaring issue that I noticed was what the film was trying to be, because I think it's a really smart pitch in the same way that you want to blend a Western with like an Eastern kung fu movie. I think that's really
Yep.
smart. I think that you can do a lot with that premise.
I agree.
And also thematically, you can have a really interesting dialogue between the East and the West. Like
I
the
agree.
fruit's there. Like it's a great seed to plant. I'm all for this premise.
The setup is so it's such a smart idea, like you said, and it makes my mind expand with imaginative ideas of where this could have gone.
Yeah.
But instead, we just get fucking Mario.
We
you know
just
what I
get
mean?
Mario, and it's just like, and it's so and it is disappointing. Like
Yeah.
and the action isn't that interesting. It's kind of by the numbers, and like I can understand why, because this is a first time director. And I feel like he almost aimed for pastiche. Like it almost wanted to make fun of the Kung Fu and Western genres.
Yeah, like a spoof or something. Yeah.
But in saying that, it didn't have anything to say when it was making fun of it. It was just literally doing the tropes.
Yeah, it was. These tropes were just kind of thrown together into a mix match of different scenes and moments onto a screen.
Yeah.
And like, look, I don't mind that if it's a save the princess story. I don't necessarily mind that if it's like a folktale or something. Like, I can get amongst that. But the problem is that it doesn't actually use that premise instead to build the character relationships that are really strong. Like, obviously, Jackie and Owen are bringing their personality to the screen. They've got good chemistry, but they're given nothing to do together. That's
at least Will Smith, and I'm going to draw a lot of parallels to Wild Wild West because it's the better version of this movie that we would recommend over this. But at least with Will Smith. Oh, by the way, and listen to that episode if you want to hear one of the better episodes of the show. Listen to our Wild Wild West review. It's great for so many reasons. But especially with that, at least Kevin Kline and Will Smith have like not just great chemistry, but they got a good script behind them.
I agree. Oh, yes, that's arguable, but yeah, but
They got a great screenplay behind them.
comparatively to this, yes.
And also, like, it's trying to say something. With this movie, like, you have the Chinese princess be a slave. You could talk about aristocracy with that. You could talk about slavery with that, and ignores both of them. You have Jackie Chan consistently be a victim of racism, and the film goes nowhere with it. Like, it's kept on played off as a gag, and it doesn't really say anything about it. Like, there's so many different things you could do, and the film just consistently fucks it up. It's like you've told a child to draw a new version of their artwork, and they just still keep making the same shit. It's like, Stop spilling paint on your canvas, Billy. Learn to pick up a fucking paintbrush and actually do the goddamn job.
I agree. Look, and when the film tries to like lean into its thematic elements, it's kind of pathetic. And like you said, in regards to like the racism factor in this film, it's kind of like, because there's so many jokes made, is it making a joke of that situation? You know, or is it? But then it doesn't, and it tries to say something profound about it. But then you're left with like a very adolescent understanding of what the complexity of what racism is, and so like you just got nothing.
You know what, Brenton? You know what? I've changed my mind. I'm no longer disappointed. I'm angry at this film. Fuck it.
Oh, jeez, sorry.
I'm switching tone. Fuck it. You know what? I'm going through the phases. I've the kids in my office. I've said I'm disappointed. I'm like, fuck it. I'm now going to sweep the desk clean. I'm going to grab the kid and grab a fucking cane, because like we need to teach some lessons to this movie, Brenton. Lesson number 1. Why the fuck does it have like a pop rock soundtrack in this movie? Like this weird ass kind of rock and roll, like generic.
The thing that's technically like insulting is, like you said, this soundtrack.
What is going on?
It's just all over the place. Not only in those rock moments in those action scenes where it's trying to blend like this rock soundtrack with like the Chinese kung fu action, but the quieter moments of like self-reflective or characterful moments that are meant to show us themes of friendship and maybe some conflict in there as well because of different cultures and whatnot. We just get this shitty, boring,
generic,
rubbish,
Brenton-esque level soundtrack.
Yeah, and you couldn't even call it. You know, we've talked about the soundtrack of Wuthering Heights and that string section, but I would love that soundtrack in here. I agree. I think this is more insulting. If we're talking about bland, boring, adds nothing.
And I think a lot of these issues are rooted from that problem of this film not knowing whether it wants to be a Western or a kung fu movie. I honestly think that the director just went to the production departments and said, all right, half of you do Western shit, half of you make kung fu shit, and we'll just blend it together.
And I think that's what was said, because like that's a shitty piece of direction. But
yeah, I think that's what they literally did. The poor editor, I can't imagine what a nightmare this one would have been to edit. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like getting all these pieces of music and all these shots, and the editor just going, what the fuck do I do with this? And just like,
totally.
You know what I mean? And like, we should praise a little bit of it. Actually, no, I'm going to insult it some more. I got some more things to say. Fuck it.
I will bring us back to praising the film. You take us away,
fuck
buddy.
it. All right, thing number 2.
Yes, Mr. Principal.
You fucked up the music, Bill, and you fucked up the screenplay, and here's why. I really dislike, because one of your and my favorite movies is Dances with Wolves, because it shows this great kind of relationship with the Native Americans. Native Americans in this movie, they're there.
Oh, I wanted to forget about that, but continue.
I could say previously on this podcast, we've derided films for, you know, just doing like, you know, yellowface and all that kind of stuff. And this film doesn't do that, but I'm not fucking applauding it for just doing the basic prerequisite of hiring Native American actors. It does do that. What it does incorrectly is literally everything else. First and foremost, giving Jackie Chan fuck the spoilers, giving Jackie Chan a Native American wife, and then having her consistently, when the screenplay allows it, be the one to get them out of shit. Be like the living Deus Ex Machina of this movie.
Totally. In every sense. When it comes to the actual plot and getting them out of a sad situation. To spoilers again. Sorry, I'm just gonna...
Who cares? No one cares.
We're just gonna spoil this one aspect. To literally the end scene where she just like gives up her whole character arc and the whole Native American, I guess, arc in this film, or reason for them being there, which was to bring two characters together as husband and wife, or, you know, their version of that, I guess.
It's ridiculous. Yes, there's all these issues there, but you could literally grab a fucking coin as you're watching this movie and wait for them to get into a problem and just flip it to see if whether she'll rock up or not. Because like that's the rate that she saves them on this journey.
Well, 50%.
It is pretty much that. And you know what? It kind of makes Owen Wilson and Jackie Chan useless because they kind of like Mr. Magoo bumble their way through like...
I would argue that. I would say that Jackie Chan is not useless for the first like half of the film. He's really, he's actually kind of, he's so good at what he does, you know, and he's obviously doing these fight scenes and he wins everything. And Owen Wilson just may as not be there. You know what I mean? Like he serves nothing.
I think he was stoned the whole shoot. I just think like, no, like he just rocked up. I think he came from a party in a cowboy costume and they just shoehorned it into this movie.
Don't get me wrong. I like that he's in this movie. And I think the chemistry between those two actors is what saves it.
Yeah.
Wow, man. Like I just...
Did you hear that wow? We do get a wow on this movie.
We do get a wow. We'll talk about that wow in the spoilers, maybe.
Okay, I've got so many things I could talk about. Third and foremost, it's racist on so many levels. I dislike that for some reason, like this humor is so like inspired. Like, we're like, oh, let's call him John Wayne. I'm like, really? Like, this is like your angle at trying to have some depth to a character? And in the sense that for some reason, like, Jackie Chan is like protective of his hair. You know what the biggest crime of this movie is, actually? They have Jackie Chan and he like barely fights in it.
I know. He does with the first half, and like in most of the fight scenes when it comes to just like he's on the run or like he's on the ground and he needs to get out of a sticky situation, he will fight and he will come out on top in those scenarios.
Yeah, and it's great when he does.
I agree, but as the film goes on and we see the climaxes, he just does less and less.
I don't know why. You've Jackie Chan at your disposal and this is what you do. It's like, I just don't understand. And he's funny. I think like he's doing the best acting he could possibly do for this movie. Like,
do you think that the choreographed fight scenes in which he does his action and he does his own stunts, do you think that they are good set pieces? Do you think they're good moments in the film? Or do you think they're underwhelming?
Not really. I watched this movie literally hours ago and I've already forgotten like what some of these fight scenes are.
That says it all. I don't need to say anything else.
Exactly. Like, they're just not. I remember him with the horseshoe. That was fun. I like that.
There's a lot of horse. He does a lot of horse stunts. There's a lot of horse humor in this film.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Jesus. The horses in this movie. But it's not like Alden Ehrenreich. You've seen Hell Caesar, right?
Yes.
But I love it when we first meet Alden Ehrenreich in that movie and he's like on the horse and he's standing on it, then he like swings around a branch and like shoots like his guns. You know that thing I'm talking about?
Yeah, totally.
It's that kind of shit I wanted to see in this movie. Even the Coen brothers in that like 10-second segment had more energy than this movie.
There are moments that Jackie Chan, when he gets to do his fight sequences, that I think that you see his work ethic and what he can do and what he is capable of doing is simply remarkable. But like I said, I think he's underutilized in this. And I think some of those moments
absolutely
could be a bit more, have a bit more wow factor and energy, as you put it. I guess just to finish this off, I mean, like for me, if we're going to talk about positives, like I was thinking, let's bring it back to the positives. And I was like, the only real positive is that chemistry between Owen and Jackie, who seem to have a genuine...
That's literally the only positive. But it is good. And like, I'm happy to see them together.
And it's not, again, the film itself, I don't know if it's in moments it is insultingly bad, but it's not like something that is like so atrocious that like you're going to have a Cats-like experience where you're going to want to tear your eyes out, shove them under your butt and just sit on them and squash them a bit. It's more so that it's because it's so boring. And it's going to be one of those films, I think, with you. I'd love to chat to you tomorrow about this because I think as your experience with this film continues, as you continue to think about it, I think it's going to get worse and worse for you, Nathan. And I feel for you, brother.
Yeah. I think next week when we do Drunken Master, I think because I have a suspicion that I think Drunken Master is going to be a billion times better than this.
We don't know, but we might know. So
yeah, who knows? You know, listeners, in the future you'll just be able to scrub back and forth between these two and do them back to back. I think we're ready to rate it.
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
Yeah, well, I'm giving it a thumbs down straight up.
Same.
It's like you said, disappointing is the word. I kind of want to watch Shanghai Nights though because there is.
But did you love it as a kid?
Again, I don't know if this was the one. You know what I mean? Like, I don't remember any of these scenes.
What have you done, Brendan?
I don't remember any of these interactions. So the more I think about it, the more I think it was Shanghai Nights. But that is a review for another day. 2 years' time, in fact.
In Shanghai Nights, they go to the UK, don't they?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. And something tells me that I remember that poster as well. So I think it's Shanghai Nights. Mate, I'm so sorry.
But honestly, if you want to watch a movie like this, watch Wild Wild West. Wild Wild West is the much better version of this. And it's so much fun. Just watch it again. We should have just watched it again. We should have just done Wild Wild West like as a second review and just keep on talking about it.
Can we make a rule that like I don't know what number it is, like every 172 episodes of the show we re-review Wild Wild West?
Done. Brenton, that is now a rule. Every 172nd episode we'll do after Wild Wild West, we will re-review Wild Wild West. That is now happening.
I am so happy.
I know what number episode Wild Wild West was. Actually, no, I'll look it up now so we can bloody write this down. Listeners, get a pen and paper out so someone can remind us when this happens. Oh, here we go. 77. So what did you say? 172 episodes? So 77 plus 172 is 149. No, 249. So on episode 249, the eve before our 250th, we will talk about Wild Wild West again.
That's actually fun. I'm down for that.
I'm all for that too. Probably in the year 2023. Who knows?
You'll know in the future, but again, we don't know now. So you giving it a thumbs down?
My thumbs are buried in the sand like Owen Wilson. Just
Speaking of a spoiler, let's spoil this film.
You spoiled it.
What?
The movie.
Oh.
Where do you want to start with this mess, Brenton? You know what? I'm going to get angrier. I feel like the more I talk about this, the more disappointed I'm going to get.
Let's start from the top. So we start off in Imperial China with the Imperial Guard.
Fuck, it hyped me up. I was expecting like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon level shit. You know what I mean? With that, because they're all doing like they're on their red uniforms, like bloody chopping about. I was like it was beautifully shot as well. I'm like, fuck yeah, like this is great.
How it let you down, though, because basically Lucy Liu, who we haven't spoken about, is the princess that for some reason wants to leave. She's like, it's like,
because of the arranged marriage.
yeah, she wants to be in a whole new world, you know what I mean? She wants to experience something else, so she wants to head west, go west, and she wants to get out of there, and so this random American guy that's just there, I think he's teaching her English, is like, yo, I can get you out, sister, and she's like, okay, and then they leave, and then Jackie Chan tries to stop them, because he's like, oh no, that's not good, I must do my duty, and then she's like, oi, don't do that, and he's like, oh, okay, and he like gets on his hands and knees, and it's like, all right, cool, then she just leaves, and then a squad is formed from the guard to go after her into the west, because they leave a note.
Viola Davis like rocks up.
She's eating a steak.
She's
It's a
in
good
that
time.
great steak. And she's in Imperial China. And she's like, right.
She says, we're forming a team, and then Jackie Chan goes, I want in on that team. And then, is it his dad or whoever
His uncle, I think.
yeah, was like, oh, Jackie Chan's a good guy. And they're like, okay, he can go along. Maybe they can get rid of him on the way. And they're like, all right, cool. That's all in like the first 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're like, at that point, I was like, I don't know why she really left. Like, you said it was the arranged marriage, but that was never really clear. Like, I can't even really remember that, to be honest.
No.
What her intentions really were, because she goes to the West. And then we're just suddenly introduced to Owen Wilson, who's just like robbing a train.
It's just, yeah. That almost stilled the movie. Was his little plans that he drew up? And like the most obvious crayon kind of thing. I'm like, oh, Owen, like...
Hey, he should become an artist, because his drawing of that train was quite good for the time, I think.
It looks good. I was like, good on you, mate. It was like, oh, let's like do the normal thing and like...
Wing it.
Yeah, let's just wing it.
Yeah, and so for some reason, Walter Goggins, who I thought was going to be a bigger character in this film.
He's great. He's always good in everything.
I agree.
I love him.
agree. I was like, he rocked up and I was like, cool. Is he going to be like the villain of this piece, or is he going to be like a henchman or something? And he rocks up and you're like, oh man, this guy's kind of like a psycho. And he like shoots someone in cold blood that is that uncle of Jackie Chan. He tries to rob some women and Owen puts a stop to that. I thought that girl on the train that Owen gave the ring back to as well, I thought that she was going to be more of a character as well. I got excited. I was like,
because that
cool.
little moment, he's like, we don't steal from women. And she's like, woo! I love it when he's like flirting with her. It's like, oh, you feel a little bit excited now, don't you?
Well, I thought in that moment, what I was expecting to happen, what I wanted to happen, was her to do a big fuck you, and that she was kind of in on it as well, and then she escaped out of that scenario or something, and then she was a
that would've
character
been
in the
cool.
film. I was excited. I thought she was going to be a character in it, but no, that didn't happen. And instead, Jackie Chan mistakes that Owen Wilson killed his uncle, even though it was that crazy Walter Goggins, who never really... I mean, he gets put in prison at the end of the film, but, you know, who cares? He kind of gets away with it. But, well, he doesn't. He gets put in prison. Anyway, so Jackie Chan, mistakes Owen Wilson. We have this random chase scene on the train involving logs falling off the train, involving, unchaining carriages, involving dynamite.
And I just felt nothing during... it's meant to be exciting, but, I feel nothing.
No. I mean, I liked the characters.
I liked it when the fat one fell in mud. Can someone please just audio clip just that one sentence and put it in weird places?
Hey, that's gonna be our sneak preview of this episode for next week.
Just that one sentence on loop and just that phrase of ooh, and falling down.
Yeah, we'll put that clip on.
And also, it's so random because at the end, because that's the most non-threatening characters. Because at the end when they all rock up and Jackie Chan's pointing the gun and they all surrender because they're surrounded by the Native Americans. They're all like, oh, okay, I guess we'll just give up too. And they kind of giggle it off.
Yeah, and they're like, you're going to prison because I'm the sheriff now. It's like, who elected you, motherfucker? Who elected you, both of you as sheriff? It's such a strange moment. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. Speaking of the sheriff, Christ, when that sheriff star went to the bloody Walter Goggins' hand or whatever it was.
Oh, yeah, no, not Walter Goggins, the other villain.
Other one. There's too many villains in this because you got the Chinese villain and then you've got the American villain.
Walter Goggins isn't even a villain. He's just some random character. I thought he was going to be more of a role, and then he just wasn't. So, the actual villains are like you said, that Chinese slave owner, basically, who's for some reason wants that. What was his reasoning for kidnapping the princess? I wasn't quite sure.
I don't even remember, Brenton.
Oh, because he wanted to. It was a ransoming thing. He wanted to ransom to get some gold. That's
right, to get the gold. That's right. Which Owen Wilson never gets, by the way, because that's you think why he joins them in the first place, because Owen Wilson's like, fuck yeah, gold.
But the gold disappears. The crate is gone from where it was, and he's like, he took the gold, and then Owen Wilson throws a coin back. So, did he take the gold, or did someone else take the gold? Or where is the gold?
Was it in that safe that fell in the river?
No. At the end of the film, before we go into the final climax, in the church, the Emperor's Guard brings forth a chest, like a Chinese chest, and they put it in front of the villain, and they open it, and it's filled with the gold, remember? It's filled with the Chinese coins, and there's all this gold in there, and they shut it, and they're like, we'll take the princess now. And then Owen and Jackie rock up. Do you not remember this? There's a chest of gold.
I literally finished the film 2 hours ago, and I still can't remember that.
There's a chest of Chinese gold that is there in one scene. Owen kills the American baddie, and then he disappears, and Jackie's like, oh, he took the chest of gold. And then a coin is flipped by Owen as that the gold coin lands back at Jackie's feet, and he's like, do you think money means everything, old pal? And it's like, well, obviously you do think money means everything because you had a coin and the chest is gone. Where did the chest go? That's my point. Like,
I don't even know. I don't even care, Brett. I don't even have answers for this. Like, it's you know what? I'm not even going to try and think of a solution to this shitty screenwriting, you know? It's like, ask the screenwriter where this fucking chest went. You know what I mean? Like,
well, luckily there's plenty more shit to talk about because then Jackie Chan goes off by himself on some wrong directions from Owen Wilson, and he ends up in a Native American camp. He saves this a Native American child.
That's when I actually got on board with the movie a little bit. I was like, because you see Jackie Chan getting really high with the Native Americans, and I'm like, I'm all for this. I'm like,
he certainly does.
This is great.
It's like a montage of him puffing. You know what I mean? He's just puffing it in.
This is so good. It's so stupid.
And it kind of escalates, and the climax is that he wakes up in a tent and he realizes that he has a woman's arms around his bare chest, and he's like, oh, what have I done? And then he goes outside.
I was hoping it would segue into that scene from Barton Fink where he wakes up and it's like the dead woman next to him. He's like, what have I done? And like the fly is like buzzing around the tent.
Yeah, and then John Goodman pops in with a shotgun and the tent sets on fire, and he's like, what have you done?
Jackie Chan's like, I just wanted to write my screenplay. And we realize it's all been a weird dream.
Guys, check out our Barton Fink review if you have no idea what we are talking about.
The movie's a good time at least.
That's not what happens. Instead, he opens his tent flap.
He opens his tent flap to a whole fucking crowd. There's like 100 Native Americans just standing outside the tent, and they're cheering. They're like, woo! It's like he's fucked the chief's daughter.
That's the other thing. So they're now together, like by this crew's law. They're together now, right? They're bound together. Like the chieftain like grabs both their hands and shoves them back together. Even he's like, no, you've done this. Like you must stay with her. And Jackie's like, yeah, all right, cool. And then at the end of the film, he just gives it to Owen Wilson.
What?
Like, I just don't understand. Like, again, it undermines that whole culture, and it undermines her for her to like...
Yeah, because she saved the day consistently, and
she's like, oh yeah, I'll mac on to Owen Wilson, the most useless character in this thing.
But they've never had a conversation before this scene.
Yeah, and also not my husband, you know? Like, they've never had any, like, building relation. There's not been any sly looks of, like, attraction.
Reason.
I mean, Owen Wilson says, oh, hey, pretty girl, when she first springs them from prison. But that's it.
And then for some reason, Jackie Chan's like, oh, I now kind of like Lucy Liu, so, like, fuck it, make out with Owen Wilson. But he doesn't even say it. He just gives her, like, a glance, and she interprets that as, like, oh, I'll make out with Owen Wilson.
How's that one? Well, I can't even remember what the line... This character's name, by the way, this girl's name is... I want to say it's Falling Feather or something like that. What is it?
Something like that. Falling Leaves?
Falling Leaves, that's it. Yeah, so she has this line, and she's like... So he's like, oh, there's this block between us, this language barrier, I can't get past it. And she's like...
Oh, yeah, because it's revealed that she speaks English, which is just ridiculous.
She's like, shut up and kiss me or something, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
gosh.
it's like that, and you can so tell a man wrote that, and you're just like, like it's just insulting.
I kind of vomited in my mouth a bit in that moment, to be honest.
It's just weird pairing. It's like, it also feels kind of racist. It's like, oh, let's put the two Chinese characters together at the end for the sake of it, and then like we'll put the cowboy and the Indian together.
What's weird is that you have that weird like makeout session between those two, and then we get this wholesome moment between Lucy Liu and Jackie Chan where they just like hold hands and they're like, oh,
I can tell that they're probably just like good mates in real life.
I kind of wanted just them to like not even have a romantic relationship, just have a relationship that was based around respect and friendship. You know what I mean? And she was appreciative of what he did for her, and he adored her for who she was. You know, like that would have been great. And they just held hands, and it was like, oh, we're great mates. Maybe that's what they were going for. I don't know.
Wouldn't it have been better if like she goes to reach the hand, and you think he's going to hold her hand too, but suddenly he just like falls down onto the floor and just like starts bowing at her again, and she's like, Jackie, we've talked about this. Stop. You don't have to keep bowing to me. And he's like, no, you're the princess. I have to keep bowing. And then like the rest of the Chinese cast continue to get on their like hands and knees as well.
I mean, like that'd be an interesting scene. Maybe there'd actually be some conflict between the two of them as well, which would add some much needed interest and entertainment for the film.
You know what else pisses me off about this movie, Brenton? And you know what? It goes beyond this film as well. This is kind of the breaking point for me.
Whoa. I'm
now sick of movies in general where a character walks into a bar and the whole bar goes quiet as they walk in because they notice this character.
I know.
Why do movies do this? I don't know why. It never happens in real life. It will never happen in real life. I get that it's meant to be metaphorical, like, oh, you feel like an outsider in a pub because everyone's looking at you. Obviously, it doesn't literally happen. But it's just done so much to this point that it's just so cliche that I'm just now so against it.
I agree. I kind of wish when I walked into a bar or a social gathering that like everyone would just stop and look at me as well and just like stop in silence and just like look straight over at me. But it hasn't happened yet, much to my disappointment.
You keep trying.
Due to no lack of trying on my part either. I try to swing the door shut, you know, I try to swing it shut behind me.
You walk into a library and everyone does it and you're very happy. You're like, hey.
Has it ever happened to you?
I mean, if it did, I would just like, I'll do that moment with C-3PO in episode 9 where I just look behind me as they're all looking at me. Like, who's everyone looking at? Like,
What a great moment.
does that work with the bars? Does putting a wet t-shirt around prison bars actually bend them? Is that a thing?
Nathan, I didn't do physics, but something tells me that that's bullshit.
It happens. And even Owen Wilson is like standing there going, this looks like bullshit.
I hope that we are never detained in our lifetime.
Oh my
One,
God.
you know, one.
Who's to say we're not in prison now, Brenton? Like,
I hope we are never in prison in a cell together, and that the guards walk past and are like, "What are they doing?" And they see us that we've taken our shirts off, and
Oh,
we're just both taking a piss on them both. Like,
that's a scene I did not know I wanted to see in a movie. Like Owen Wilson taking a piss and then Jackie Chan behind him giving a fucking massage. Jesus Christ. What is this movie, Brenton?
I thought it was setting it up for a joke too, that falling leaves was gonna like break them out of prison, and then it was gonna be a shot from her perspective of that happening. But
No.
it never happened.
It's just this weird ass moment between Jackie and Owen. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And you can kind of see that, and Owen's not saying no to it. Like Jackie's kind of massaging and Owen's like, yeah, he's not against it. He's like, I guess I'll enjoy this.
And then the American bad guys are basically introduced in the next kind of set piece, in which they're like saying, "Come on out, you know, we need you guys to come on out because we're gonna kill Owen Wilson. We're gonna take Jackie Chan back to the
embassy or whatever it is."
They're like, "Oh, okay." And then Owen Wilson's like, "Well, you can't shoot a man unarmed." And so like Jackie Chan then goes and throws his guns to him.
I love when he does that and he gives like a little wave at Owen Wilson when he does it.
Yeah, he gives him a little wave and then like ducks behind cover.
Oh my God. It's amazing. And Owen Wilson's like, motherfucker.
Hilarious.
I love as well, like, it has that Annie Hall moment where we hear their thoughts as they're about to have the shootout.
Yeah.
Owen Wilson's like, fuck, I'm not going to live through this. And then Jackie Chan saves him and he's like, damn it, you ruined my fight.
I think as well, like, the problem with these set pieces, you know, like, because that's a set piece and they kind of get out of that situation somehow. And then the next thing happens and they've been captured and, you know, they're being about to be hung. And they get out of that one as well. And that's a moment as well where Falling Leaves again saves the day and shoots the noose, you know, and Owen Wilson falls into the coffin and then Jackie Chan gets him out of there. But it's all just becomes kind of a bit forgettable and underwhelming at that point. Like, you don't really remember, like, any of these fight scenes, do you?
The only thing I remember is at the very end when, like, he gets saved by the bell, like, literally.
I agree. Like, that last fight scene with the spear was pretty cool.
It was good. I'm all for that. Because you know why? It reminds me of better movies.
Yeah.
Because in Hero, back when we did the 52 reviews in 52 minutes, I mentioned Hero as one of the films.
Yep.
It's just, watch Hero above this for so many reasons. But it has a great scene where one of the martial artists has a spear and you see amazing spear choreography. Like, with like two spears battling each other, and it's so cool. And when I saw that in this movie, I'm like, oh, I wish I was watching a better film.
Nathan, I'd love to learn how to fight with not only a sword, you know, but I'd love to learn how to fight with a spear. I think I'd have a good time, or like a staff or something, you know what I mean?
I'm surprised in Star Wars we haven't seen, like, a light spear.
I agree. I think that should happen.
Yeah.
I remember in The Force Awakens, not The Force Awakens, The Force Unleashed, that video game. I don't know if you've ever played it.
No, I went outdoors as a child.
There was the equivalent of those, like, you know, Palpy's guards from, like, Revenge of the Sith, like the red guys with the slit in the face. So there was like black versions of those that you could fight in that game.
Oh, how diverse.
They had they had staffs with like little lightsaber ends that came out of the end of them, like red bladed lightsabers. So yeah, they have existed.
They've dipped their toe in that, you know? They're getting close to it.
Could you imagine if Rey built her lightsaber in Rise of Skywalker? Spoilers, by the way, for that film.
If you care.
And it was actually a light spear?
That would have been cool. I'm happy with what she got at the end. Like, the yellow double-edged lightsaber is pretty badass.
It wasn't double-edged. We never found out if it was double-edged.
I know she lit one end, but if you look on the other end of it, there's a hole where you could see.
I hope there is, because my prediction, and I said this when The Force Awakens came out, I said, even though I wasn't taken by that film, but I said, by the end of this franchise, by the end of this trilogy, I want to see Rey have a double-bladed, like, based on the design of that staff thing she has. I wanted to have a double-bladed lightsaber, but I wanted it to be purple for her. That was the thing. I was like,
only Mace gets purple.
Nah, man, like the yellows, I don't know if the yellow's right for Rey. You know, I think the purple's good because it's got a bit of the dark side. It's got a bit of the Jedi side. It's all kind of there.
I don't trust your opinions on lightsabers because you still confess that your favorite lightsaber and the coolest one is Luke's green one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know why, because it's the most generic and bland of all the lightsabers, and literally half the Jedi have that exact same lightsaber.
It's so cool. It's such a cool lightsaber.
Nah.
Which one do you think's the coolest?
Oh, Darth Maul's by a million years. Like,
oh gosh, no. That one looks so. I think that one looks a bit. What's the word for that one?
it's a bit Shanghai Noon, isn't it? Just a little bit bland. You know, actually, I really love Dooku's because it's hooked.
Oh yeah, that's cool too. Yeah.
I like all of them.
But apart from the fact that Maul's is double-sided, like double-bladed.
The actual like hilt itself is not that interesting. Like, I get that.
Exactly.
Neither is Luke's, by the way. His is extremely generic.
Are you kidding me? That one's cool. It's got like, the little bit at the top, and then it like goes thin, and then it gets a bit wider, and then it gets even like, you know, and that's got the grip bit, and you're like, oh fuck yeah, I'm Luke Skywalker, bitch. And then he like starts swinging it, and like that theme starts playing, and then Han hits Boba Fett, and Boba Fett hits Jabba's sail barge.
Oh my god. So you're thinking more about how the lightsaber is used than the saber itself. I think that's where this is rooted in, Brenton.
And then Darth Vader's even like, Darth Vader even thinks it's cool. He's like, I see.
Yeah, he's like, whoa. Where did this come from?
I see you've made yourself a new lightsaber. And Luke's like, yeah, I did, Dad. You're my daddy. Are you going to come back to the lightsaber? And he's like, nah, bitch, because I got a better one. And then he whips out his.
You know what? Vader's is actually quite disappointing. I've always been disappointed in Vader's one. Like, I think he deserves a better lightsaber.
It's like a poor man's Anakin Skywalker lightsaber, you know what I mean? Like it's like the same design, but it's got those black bits on it, and it's like, oh, it's a bit chunky. It's like, oh man, no, get rid of that. I like a slim saber, you know what I'm saying? Can I keep going?
No, Brenton. No, we're not here to talk about fucking Star Wars. We're here to talk about Shanghai Noon, Brenton. Brenton, this movie has bloopers. And this is probably the first movie and might be the only movie that we'll review that has bloopers.
I wish Wuthering Heights had a blooper reel, but that's just me.
Oh my god, that'd be amazing. Could you imagine? Oh, I'd want you to haunt me, and then like he just then Laurence Olivier just snorts like.
No, I feel like Laurence Olivier was so serious that he'd never crack, he'd never corpse. But I feel like she would have, like he would have. I want you to haunt me, and she's like playing dead, and then she just like bursts out laughing, and he's like, I'm being serious, like let me act, like. Come on, bitch! Like I'm just trying to act.
That's amazing. Do you have like a favorite bloopers reel that you've seen?
I've got a few. One of my favorite ones is actually Talladega Nights.
Oh yeah, and any of those like Will Ferrell comedies are amazing with their bloopers.
I think that one's pretty good. I think Anchorman 2's actually got a really good blooper reel as well. Surprisingly,
Step Brothers as well.
Oh, Step Brothers is good. Yeah, Step Brothers is good. Yeah.
You know what? I promise you, this is not biased, but I actually do love the bloopers from the Spider-Man Raimi trilogy.
I agree. I think they are funny as well.
They're really good. Sadly, Willem doesn't have any good moments, but Toby has some great moments.
Toby has some good ones. Spider-Man 3 one's really good as well.
Yeah, especially with the J. Jonah Jameson scenes. Like, there's some great bloopers in there.
Absolutely. There's also some funny stuff, I think, with Kirsten Dunst when, like, things go wrong and she's, like, trying to act to it. Yeah. It's, like, it's really funny.
It is really good. But in saying that, like, it's like, I love that this movie has bloopers, and I was very happy that they were there. But like, in saying that, do you like it when bloopers are in the credits, or do you like just want them to be straight to YouTube, like DVD kind of thing?
No, I don't mind it. It depends on the film, obviously. Like if Spotlight ended and like those end credits happened and like it told you about like where all the cases of this,
and then next minute, Steve, like bloody,
and then we saw how Mark Ruffalo and Michael Keaton were like cracking in this scene and they couldn't get the words out. You know, like
he was raped and they both just snicker. It's like, ooh, it'd take the edge off, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I feel like there's a time and place. But when they are there, I feel like for this film, if it had been maybe a bit funnier, then sure.
It's funny. The bloopers were better than the movie. Like when they ran into the door and it wouldn't open. I'm like, why didn't you just put that in?
Yeah, true. I feel like the bloopers of the bath scene were pretty spot on as well, because I think those guys had a good time in the bath scene, which we haven't spoken about. God, we haven't. Which we need to get into.
What is this movie, Brenton?
Because we're here to promote alcoholism between human beings and horses.
Oh, good Christ, we haven't talked about the horse even sitting yet, which is a whole other thing. The fact that we get this scene... Brenton, I think this would be a fun drinking game. I think you and I should get in some baths and play this, because this looks actually fun.
Yeah, it's like basically I think there's a Chinese...
A song?
I think like Itsy Bitsy Spider, but think if you have to say Itsy Bitsy Spider as fast as you can, and if you have a fuck up at any point, you have to take a shot.
Which is pretty good. I swear I've done that drinking game. Like a version of that. Like
really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was right. That time that we were in the bath. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Fuck, it's weird that they share a bath by the end of that scene. What is
I know,
going
and
on?
I like that that's the reaction that woman comes in and she's like, "Oh, you gonna join us?" And then she's like, whoa. And then like goes to them both. And Jackie Chan's like blowing bubbles out of his mouth, which was actually a callback. This is interesting.
To the Drunken Master.
Yeah, which we're going to review next week.
So when he does it in that movie, we'll be like, woo!
We'll be like, oh, where's Owen? Where is he?
You know what? Seeing Jackie Chan like in this movie, I'm so hyped for next week's movie. Because if it's just good and they actually use Jackie Chan effectively, and hopefully he's the drunk guy, I'll be sold.
Jackie Chan seems like he's a wholesome human being. Don't you agree? Like
He
I
seems
think
lovely.
he brings such charisma to the screen, such warmth. So like like his performance in this is just like you can just swear by it because it's just wholesome.
He's just a wholesome man, Brenton. Do you have like a favorite Jackie Chan movie or some other performances he's done? That you've liked?
I do. Funnily enough. Do you know that remake of the film Around the World in 80 Days? with
Oh
Jackie
my
Chan?
God. I haven't seen the remake with him in it.
I haven't seen that in so long, but I used to watch that a lot as a kid as well, and I used to really get amongst it. I thought it was really funny.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty good.
Let's look at that when that released, just for funsies.
Have you seen that Jackie Chan movie, The Spy Next Door?
No, I haven't.
Oh, I saw that in cinemas when I was a kid. That was good. It's probably shit now, but it was great at the time.
Is it? Yeah, I wonder. Okay, so 2004 that film came out.
Ah.
There was Jackie Chan and Steve Coogan. That's right, was the
Such
inventor.
a
of it.
weird cast. It was so bizarre.
What a weird cast.
They should have just brought back Owen Wilson for that movie. It's like, wow, we're in a balloon.
Actually, funnily enough, give me 2 seconds. If I'm not mistaken, Owen Wilson in this for a second. Yeah, Owen Wilson's in it.
What? Is he actually in the movie? That's amazing.
He's totally
what does
in
he
it.
do in it?
Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson are in that film.
What are they doing?
There are so many
in it?
people in this movie. Can I just read this cast list, please? So we have such actors as Jackie Chan, Steve Coogan, Jim Broadbent, Kathy Bates, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mark Addy, John Cleese, Rob Schneider, Luke Wilson, Owen Wilson. Everyone's in this.
Jeez, what a movie, Brenton. I think we've concluded that there are several movies that are better than this one we're talking about.
We're finding any excuse to talk about something else.
Oh my God. Then let's dive into some special segments.
Special segment.
Ooh, so special. What two characters do you think should have kissed in this movie?
I think there should have been some kissing and some bubbles in that bathtub. You know what I'm saying?
I'm
Like,
surprised for a gag that they didn't have Owen and Jackie kiss at one point. Like he will go to kiss a girl, but then suddenly she moves and ends up being Owen or something like that.
I reckon they probably just kissed when the cameras weren't rolling. Like,
Yeah, they were just macking out in the trailer.
they just probably had a cheeky peck. I feel like there's no real relationships in this film that are like built up apart from Jackie and Owen. That would make sense if they kiss. So
Exactly.
I could, even if it was just a kiss on the cheek, like thank you mwah, on the cheek, and just like, oh bro.
Like the one that Lucy Liu gives Jackie Chan.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's what it should have been. I would have loved that, Brenton. I think it would have been very special. Also, maybe the horse and Jackie Chan, because the horse kind of licks him at one point, but I want to see Jackie Chan get into it.
Just return it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he gives the horse a kiss, and he's having a good time. Like if the horse can fucking sit like a dog, it deserves a kiss.
I wish I could do that. Sit, Harold.
Brenton, sit.
Oh, fuck you.
MCU is a segment where we try and see if we can put characters from one movie into the MCU and see how they would function in the MCU.
That's true. And MCU is a funny segment because literally every film we review, you want to add MCU into the special segments.
Because I think it's so funny. I think every movie should be put into the MCU. I just love the meme.
I agree. I would love to see Owen Wilson and Jackie Chan be members of the Avengers. I would love to see them as Avengers.
I know what they would do because Jackie's probably more useful than Owen as a fighter.
I agree, but I think there could be some fun banter between Star-Lord and Owen Wilson because Star-Lord is, whilst he is, people joke about him and say he's, a worthless.
What do you mean Star-Lord's worthless?
Like the Guardians of the Galaxy are always joking around a bit like, oh yeah, Star-Lord's fucking useless. Like this.
I don't think he's useless. I think he's one of the most useful, if anything.
Hang on a second.
He's the one making the plans and leading the team.
I think he's useful, but there's always gags that the Guardians of the Galaxy undermine him at any chance they get, like for lol.
The actual team members themselves.
So they're always joking around and they're like, oh yeah, this guy, this dickhead. But I think Owen Wilson's funny because he has the same bravado as say Star-Lord, but he is actually useless. You know what I mean?
So it's like, no, please leave. And just Owen Wilson just won't leave the ship for whatever reason.
Exactly.
Like somehow, no, okay, if Owen Wilson's on the ship, he's got to have Jackie Chan with him. So Jackie Chan's got the horseshoe and they're in space with the Guardians. And he's with teenage, oh no, Jackie Chan is babysitting teenage Groot.
Absolutely.
And he's reprising the role of the spy babysitter, that movie I just mentioned before.
Perfect. I think as well that the only reason that they they have these two on board is because they need Jackie Chan's skill set. Like, they don't need Owen Wilson. They
No,
just
they
have him
don't.
Because,
But they're a
because they
package
come as-
deal.
they're a package deal, exactly.
It's like Groot and Rocket. You need Groot and Rocket. You need one without the other, you know? Like
That sounds really good, actually. I think that would work.
It's great. We're going to taste, because Owen Wilson's going to be in the Loki TV show. So we're going to get like a taste of what that might be like soon.
And speaking of useless Owen Wilson, we're also going to talk about this movie's characters versus other movies' characters, which is a segment we like to do sometimes on the show where we compare characters from, in this case, Shanghai Noon to another film, such as
Wild Wild West. Let's talk about it, because I want to do a couple of things here. First and foremost, Brenton, who would win in a battle between Wild Wild West's Will Smith and Kevin Kline versus Shanghai Noon's Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson?
As useful as I said Jackie Chan was, I think that obviously Wild Wild West would win this category because Owen Wilson, whilst he has some funny quips and he's got a lot of confidence, in his terms, he is invincible. Will Smith would match Jackie Chan in terms of fighting ability and manpower, I guess. I think Jackie Chan actually might have the edge over Will Smith. This is a team fight, you know what I mean? This is a dual effort. Kevin Costner brings in that element of surprise. He brings the tricks. He brings the gadgets.
Were you thinking of Kevin Kline when Owen Wilson had the trick ace up his sleeve as a gadget?
The thought did pop into my mind.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, we're gonna get some gadgets in this movie. But I think Kevin Kline as well would probably do better because Wild Wild West is about Will Smith and Kevin Kline trying to outdo each other. They're both extremely talented. They're just trying to one up each other.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie, it's consistently Jackie Chan piggybacking Owen. So I feel like Owen would get in the first punch. I feel like he'd be definitely the one running headfirst into the battle. But I feel like Kevin Kline would whip out a gadget, kill Owen instantly, and then maybe maybe Jackie would like ninja Kevin Kline and like maybe rip out one of his gadgets and like maybe set off a bomb that eventually kills Kevin. So it's gonna be just Will Smith v Jackie Chan.
What a scene that would be.
Who would you also rather be, Brenton, in this scenario? Oh yeah, actually, fuck it. Let's do another special segment of which scenario, because I want to bring this up. Would you rather be the sidekick? Would you rather be Owen Wilson as a sidekick to Jackie Chan, or would you rather be Will Smith as a sidekick to Kevin Kline? So you are now either Owen Wilson or you are Will Smith.
I kind of want to be on that train, so I kind of want to be Will Smith.
I feel like just in a basic sense. Also, Will Smith ends up with all the girls and all that.
So does Owen Wilson.
He does, very haphazardly, one would say. Like at least Will Smith has his wife throughout the movie.
Well, what a great moment where where Owen Wilson at the end says, "Oh, he's like a married man now. Like I've only got one woman in my life. Even though I don't know if we'll get all the ladies as lawmen. Not that it matters because we're like we've both got our own ladies. And what I said was irrelevant. But I don't even know what his point is at the end. Actually, it's just fucking weird. Anyway, Nathan. What stills this movie?
Ooh, it's blinding.
What stills this movie is where we take a screenshot of something from the movie. Normally it could be a beautiful vista that we want to celebrate, or it could just be really stupid and a really fun moment that's just wonderful to look at. Links are in the description. Check it out on YouTube and stuff. This still, Brenton, it's a moment we've avoided talking about, and it's when Owen Wilson gets buried in the sand.
This is, as I understand it, was an actual thing that happened.
Oh, did they actually bury him?
Oh, no, I don't know if like on set they actually buried him, but like this is a thing that like at the time people would do to other people. They would bury them and leave their head above for like the vultures to pick out. And it's like, what a horrible way to go. Like, first of all, like, oof. Like imagine being left out.
And that vulture looks hungry.
Yeah. They start pecking. You know what I mean? They start
do.
going for it. Owen Wilson is buried by his gang members, and then he is come upon by Jackie Chan. And Jackie Chan goes, "You killed my uncle." And Owen Wilson's like, "No, I didn't, motherfucker." Like, and then Jackie Chan's like, "I need to get to this city." And then he like gives him the wrong directions. And then before he goes, "Hang on a second, I gave up my end of the bargain. You have to now dig me out." And Jackie Chan gives Owen Wilson chopsticks and puts them in his mouth.
Oh my god.
It says, dig your own way out, basically. And so we have this still at the moment that is a vulture sitting on a mound behind Owen Wilson's head in the dirt with two chopsticks sticking on angles out of his mouth. And he has the funniest expression. He's just like, it's the expression that you would have. It's just like this wincing expression.
It's ridiculous. It is so funny. But I just want to talk about like, how did he get out? Because later on in the movie, he's like, you want to know, don't you? You want to know if I use the chopsticks or not? And Jackie Chan doesn't really care. But it's never explained. Like, there's no way he could have done it.
Who knows?
Okay, how do you think he got out, Brenton? We should establish there's no way he used the chopsticks, right? Like, there's no way they could have helped.
No.
Like, you can't dig your way out with chopsticks, right? Like, that's just not a thing.
Part of me thinks he could have, maybe. Like I don't think it's like possible, but I think maybe the movie wants us to think he did. But more likely is the Captain Jack Sparrow option, which is is that
Sea turtles.
that's the point. He said he used sea turtles, but it was actually some fucking shipping company that just rocked up and was like, oh, hey, there's a guy on this island. Let's pick him up.
Oh, right.
Some randos came along and were like, oh, hey.
And they see Owen Wilson with chopsticks and they're like, I don't want to touch this. And they just keep riding past.
Hey, Owen, do you want to come on down to the saloon and have a game of poker at the table? And he's like, sure, guys. My face is burnt to fuck, but let's go. And I'm missing like holes out of my head from where these vultures were pecking me. But hey, what have I got to lose?
Apparently everything. Hey, let's look at this film's poster. Blanton.
Yes.
Let's look at this film's poster.
But is it art?
This poster's excellent. I'm just going to come right out and say it.
I love this poster. It is perfect.
It's so good. It's everything you need this movie to be. It's what got me hyped in the first place. All it is, and all it needs to be, is just like Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson, like both in cowboy outfits. Jackie Chan looks like he's about to chop someone down. Owen Wilson's blazing his guns. And it just has him standing in the desert with the big word Shanghai Noon. And then underneath is the tag, the classic Western gets a kick in the pants. It's perfect. It's so perfect.
It's so good. The way the colors work in this, the way the composition is of the shot, the way that even the title, I'm amongst it. Like in terms of the font and the font for the actors' names as well. It just works. It is perfect. It is a great poster. It is better than the film.
Title talk.
Ooh, it's the title.
Title talk was the Shanghai Noon in Shanghai Noon.
What? Okay, during the movie, I was thinking the whole time, why the fuck is this called Shanghai Noon? This is classic Chinatown syndrome, where I'm like, when the fuck is Shanghai Noon gonna rock up? Because they keep calling him the Shanghai Kid. So I'm like, why is this movie not called Shanghai Kid? And then when the credits start rolling, I'm like, right, I gotta get to the bottom of this. The reason it's called Shanghai Noon is because it's a homage to the Western classic High Noon from 1952.
Ah, good to know.
Brenton, this is bullshit. This movie should not be called Shanghai Noon.
Okay, in response to that, what would you call it then?
I don't know, Brenton. They weren't in Shanghai for one, and I don't know if the time was noon at any point in this movie.
And Jackie Chan also notes himself as is the character he plays in this. He says, I don't know why they call me the Shanghai Kid because I'm not even from Shanghai.
Exactly.
Boom.
If anything, it's... Yeah, you got it, Brenton. So, no, I don't think it should be called that at all, frankly. I think there are much better titles that we could use rather than Shanghai Noon.
Such as?
East meets West?
It's got to be something around that, doesn't it? It's got to be like...
you got to have that clash of themes. What about Owen and Jackie?
I'm down for that. That sounds like a sitcom though, which I'm down for.
Which I'm also down. I am all for like a household sitcom starring Owen Wilson and Jackie Chan. That's great.
Absolutely. That sounds like it'd be quite a powerful piece. And speaking of power, I think we should pass that power to the people.
What a segue.
Pass it here.
What?
The power to the people.
Rotten Tomatoes, Brenton. It's the critics gave this 79%, and the
Wow.
audiences gave it 65%, which is just...
I was expecting to be in the 60s for this, to be honest, but 79's high.
This film cost $55 million to make, and the general rule of thumb is that when you include the budget plus marketing, you just double the budget. It didn't really set the world on fire.
No, it might have just broken. It might have just broken even.
Yeah, I think just broke even, which is surprising that it got a sequel in that regard. But here we are.
Maybe the draw was just on that Owen and Jackie really wanted to work together again. Who knows? Because it seems like they had a good time. But Joe Lazito also had a good time from Big Picture, Big Sound, and he said that this movie is not about plot, which is a shame because there might have been a good story to tell here. It's about fun martial arts action, and Mr. Chan, as usual, delivers. Service with a smile.
Ooh. I mean, I think he's a bit generous there, Joe. Like, I don't think fun martial arts action is what you go into this movie for. I think you'd be quite disappointed if that's what you build it as.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the idea of this is that it's the Western meets the Eastern.
Which even that it kind of fails at. Like,
yeah, totally.
Kevin N. LaForest from Montreal Film Journal didn't like it, Brenton. He wrote, first-time director Tom Day's movie looks pretty good and is relatively well put together, but story-wise, it just wanders aimlessly through various Western cliches.
Yeah, but it doesn't even wander through them well. You know what I mean? Like the Western cliches aren't even like they literally go, "We're having a Mexican standoff," and you're like, "This is the worst Mexican standoff I've ever seen." You know what I mean?
There's literally zero tension, and you know they're gonna live. It's like that's what a standoff should be. It should be major characters that you know are not gonna make it. It's just
Brian Webster from Apollo Guide also gave it a rotten review and said, "This is not the laugh riot that you might expect." Same goes for the fighting. There's certainly a lot less here than in the average Jackie Chan movie. Well, shots fired from Brian, but I gotta say, those shots were on point.
Brian, look, come on, mate. Like, you would be expecting a laugh right from this. Like, hopefully he does a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I think Brian's pretty spot on. Because, like, I would go into this going, like, oh, this is gonna be a fun movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is gonna be fun. Owen's gonna provide some comedy. There's gonna be some banter between these two. And it just wasn't classic. You know what I mean? It wasn't that classic movie banter. So I couldn't get amongst it.
Thomas S. gave it 4.5 stars and wrote, his wife has plot armor. Wow.png.
This is true, but not necessarily that it keeps her alive, that it just keeps her there to it's more that they have plot armor always, and the plot is always solved by that wife. You know what I mean? Like, she just rocks up and she just saves the day consistently, and we never see how she gets there. We never see the setup for her. She's just kind of... It just always goes to a shot, like she was always there, and you're like, oh... And then she saves the day. Chase M did not like this film and gave it 1 single star. This is not a good movie. But, to its credit, it is a fun movie to watch with your friends. Hey, man.
Probably. But even then, I feel like Wild Wild West would be more fun to watch with mates.
I would watch Wild Wild West with my mates all the time over this, unfortunately. Though, maybe if someone, you're there at someone's place, you don't know what to do, and they've got their old DVD set out, and they go, oh, hey, I've got Shanghai Noon or Wuthering Heights. That's the third Wuthering Heights reference I've made this episode.
Jesus. Get a room, Brenton.
You know what I mean? You'd probably have some alcohol, and you'd watch Shanghai Noon, and you'd probably still have a good time. Emphasis on the alcohol there.
Yeah, you need a fuckload of booze to get through this. And lastly, Stoner Siren wrote on YouTube, I used to love this movie as a kid. OMG.
Well, when we review Shanghai Nights, maybe I'll have the same sentiment.
Oh, we'll find out. Oh, no. But until then, Brenton.
Thank you for joining us on this wild train ride. Thank you. Please tell us what you thought about Shanghai Noon on our Instagram page, on our Twitter page, on our YouTube comments, or send us an email. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we really appreciate it when you give us a review and you give us a like.
Thank you so much if you do that, and if you keep it up. It's the best thing in the world. It's the literal best thing in the world. And hey, if you like this, stick around next week. We're going to talk about a much better Jackie Chan film, hopefully. Come back for Drunken Master.
Hopefully. We don't know yet.
Imagine if it's worse. Imagine for some reason we hate this more. Like, we're just like, Jackie Chan, what are you doing?
If it is worse, I will probably rock up with a few drinks. And that's how our listeners will know that Brenton did not have a good time.
He'll just be slurring between it.
But until then, Nathan, we got a train to catch.
Do we? All right.
Let's go say howdy. Come on.
Oh, yippee-ki-yay.
Sayonara.
It's Japanese. They say sayonara and it's Japanese. What are they doing?